Thank you for joining the Sharpest College Football Podcast. This is our Week 9 review. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. Robert, nice Week 9, some good games. A little bit off from time to time. It was really a good week in the SEC. That was just a series of bangers there for the Southeastern Conference, yes?
Yeah, a lot of really good games. It was a kind of weird week because it went very much how I expected it to go. Pretty much like top down. We'll talk about some of them in a second, but it wasn't the most surprising, I will say. I was pretty like, oh, okay, I expected that. So, not, it was a big week, some good games and some really big games, but yeah, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I thought that was going to happen, but still good to have that confirmation.
Yeah. Good week as always. I think we've got, objectively, I think we've a better week coming up in terms of the whole slate this week. But that'll be part 2 here. All right. If you're new, please take a screen grab of this. Save it where you do all your college football work. Shout out to at least one new listener. My guy Hovdog told me he started to listened all the way through a couple times. So he's a diehard and he's weird just like you and me. And if you're returning like Hovdog, you are, by definition, brilliant. Our Week 9 takeaways. The Big Ten playoff picture is really, it's shaping up very interestingly. There's 5 teams in the Big Ten that have 2 losses right now. I've got all of them listed here with their schedules for the entire season. I'm going to put you on the spot first and ask you, as you look at basically these 5 resumes and schedules, which of these 5, and this is a tough one, I'm still not sure, so I'm going to make you just make a case and see if you can convince me of something. Which one has the most realistic path to the playoff here? This is tough.
This is difficult. I will say that further complicating this too is the fact that not shown here, obviously, is Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon. Oregon has 1 loss, Ohio State and Indiana undefeated, right? So you're already at 3 Big Ten teams, just straight up. So this is where it gets difficult. I think the easiest path, in my opinion, the easiest path to the playoff is just Michigan beating Ohio State. That's it. You do that, you're done. You're in. Yeah. That's got to be it, right?
I thought that as I was going through this, and I thought that means none of these 5 teams are making it then. If the easiest path is just beat the number 1 team, okay. Yeah, I think that's, you've got 3 warm-up games for that, and you do have, you have them at home over a team that you've had some recent success against, to say the least. Look, I'm more of a Michigan proponent than most people, as our ratings are higher on Michigan than basically any polls, including our beloved Pipeline poll, is a little more bearish on Michigan than you and I are. Stay tuned to part 2 about that. I still can't. I know Ohio State doesn't have an awesome win on their resume, but boy, just saying that's the easy path is tricky. I can see that argument. How about this for a controversial take? Iowa.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird to say, okay, all you have to do is beat Oregon and then win at USC. I can see them matching Oregon in the tough guy department. I can see them luring Oregon into playing an Iowa kind of game. Iowa's a very different team on the road versus home. They played Indiana within 5 points, by far Indiana's toughest game so far. I could see that. Then you get to this fights make styles things against USC, where from a matchup standpoint, I think that Iowa's got more than just a puncher's chance there. The issue is, like I said, I'm concerned about a team that gave up 28 to Rutgers on the road, and then they weren't really impressive at Iowa State on the road too, so I'm a little worried about that road game aspect as well. And then they have another road game at Nebraska morning of Black Friday, but I think that's possible, which kind of takes me to one of the teams that you mentioned. Note that 3 of these teams have to play Oregon too. Not an easy path. I can't say that your path is easy if you have to play at Iowa just alone. That it. Obviously playing USC at home is beneficial. Then you're at Washington, who's not quite, but look, I think Washington's overlooked too. I can't say that those are gimmies. They're going to be favored in all 3. If I had to put a win probability on those, we're probably 65 to 75% on each of those. Does that sound about right?
For
Oregon against Iowa and SC in Washington.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, that makes That I'd agree with those numbers. It should be. I think SC should probably be closer, but still 75 or against 75 against Iowa, 75 against Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, which is tricky. If you just do that out, if you do your sims over 3 games, or let's say 300 games, 100 against each of those, that's about 200 and some wins. That gets really, now that's where the math gets really weird on this, is that, okay, whichever team, presupposing that one of those teams beats Oregon, now they're going to have a head-to-head against Oregon, and then it gets weird, because then you're saying, okay, which one of these has who has the best win of those teams? Oregon's best win would be, I guess, about the other two that in that group that they beat. SC would have Michigan. Washington really comes up short here. Washington really, yeah. I think Washington's got the toughest path. They just don't have, like, but they get Oregon at home, and they've got the layup drill before that too. I'm just confusing myself here. All right, we haven't touched on Nebraska yet. I've made cases before and against every team here. Nebraska gets USC at home. Then they get 2 relatively easier games, let's say, although back-to-back road games is not fun. And then Iowa, which is going to be tough. I agree with your initial assessment here, which makes me think Big Ten could be a 3-bid team. Even if one of these guys makes it, they might knock Oregon out then.
Yeah. So yeah, the way I see it is this. I think of it as like, it's going to sound weird when I say this, but think of it as like free wins, right? Oregon has 1 free win to give away to make it, and Ohio State and Indiana have basically 2 each, right? So Oregon has games against Iowa, USC, and Washington. If they give away one of those games, that's basically with the exception of, I would argue, Iowa, because they also have to play USC. With that exception, they basically have 1 free pass to give away to the playoff. Kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ish. If it's against Iowa or SC, if it's one of those 3 games though, you're going to get the head-to-head game, and I don't know.
My thing is this. I don't think Iowa has it. Okay, yeah, you played a close game against Indiana. That was their first road conference game. I think they were coming off of a massive high of absolutely soul-crushing destruction against Illinois. Okay, you barely beat a Penn State team that has been imploding for several weeks now. Yeah, okay, you shut out Wisconsin. I'm not giving you style points for that.
Yeah.
You crushed Minnesota. I also don't think Minnesota is good at all. So,
no.
And you lost to an Iowa State team that has 3 losses. So, I'm not seeing the only thing people are going to say the Penn State, but honestly, Penn State means nothing. That's actually an argument against them at this point. Honestly, I think the best thing is that they had a close loss against Indiana. That's it. And honestly, it's just that they scored 14 against Indiana, which is like a tad high, but I think defense just got to Mendoza. That was it. Now Oregon.
Nobody else has done that though.
Exactly. No, that is true. That's true. That is true. But and with the exception of maybe Ohio State potentially in the Big Ten championship, but no one else has done that as of this point. No, that's. Oregon looked very rough against Wisconsin this week. Now they play Oregon Iowa's this week, right? Yes, I think it happens.
Yes, it is.
So Oregon now is if they lose this game, they're probably out, because then they're gonna have a ton more tough games against USC and Washington. So I'm not worried. If they win
those, then they're in.
Yeah, exactly.
Those build the resume. Yeah.
Exactly. My thing, first of all, USC Nebraska, that's this weekend. That's an elimination game. That's straight up an elimination game. Loser that is done. Washington, they just have to win out against 3 kind of mediocre-ish teams, and then if they can beat Oregon in the final game, then they can be considered as well. But the problem is that for a lot of these scenarios where I'm a little concerned. I haven't studied the SEC schedule enough. I think it will work out, but there's some scenarios where the Big Ten is just a 3-bid league, and the reason for that being certain things didn't work out in the SEC, right? I think it's unclear, right? With Alabama, if Alabama gets another loss, and they have some particularly tough games coming up, they've got newly fired LSU. You could have a bounce back game from the firing, right? Mm-hmm. You've got Oklahoma, who's never completely out of it, and you've got Auburn. Those are not particularly easy cakewalks. Georgia has Georgia Tech. They have Georgia Tech. They have Texas. right? So Georgia is not completely safe yet either. Missouri lost their quarterback. They're in trouble. They were a really good team, but I don't think they're going to be able to make it. Vanderbilt looks pretty good, but if they suffer another loss, they could be in trouble too. Texas A&M looks pretty dominant at this point. Oklahoma obviously is done, I think.
No, they have 2 losses. They could.
Yeah.
They've
Well, if they can
got
get
the
back
tough
into
schedule. If they could win out,
yeah, there's a path.
yeah,
But I also feel like what you have to do is you have to root for, if you're any of these 5 teams, you're rooting for SMU against Miami this week. Because if SMU can upset Miami, this becomes a whole lot easier for you. Or you either want that or you just want Miami and Georgia Tech to win out and then Georgia Tech to beat Miami. But here's the question, right? If Georgia Tech beats Miami if both of them win out, Georgia Tech beats Miami in the ACC championship game, do they both get in? Because you're going to make an argument that it's a difficult argument to make, really. But it's just, okay, Miami lost to Louisville and Georgia Tech. Do we put them in or not? And it's going to be like, okay, it's a 2-loss Miami against one of these 2 losses, right? So this is where I think they could steal that bid from the ACC, but it would be really helpful if Miami had another loss or something in there. So
yeah.
It's very complex at this point. We need a couple more data points, but this is a very intriguing system here and the thing is, honestly, I don't know. I am very concerned that if the SEC teams just win out, that they're just going to throw 6 of them in because of the new strength of schedule thing, and they're just going to be like, all right, it's done. And to be fair, there's an argument for that. It's not the craziest argument, but I would much rather. I think these Big Ten teams are probably better than, they're better than some of those SEC teams. I think maybe not better than Ole Miss, but I think like a USC or a Washington or a Michigan is better than, say, Vanderbilt. They're better than, say, a Vanderbilt, or better than potentially even like Bama or Georgia, depending on the day, right? Like, we haven't seen them play a ton of really good teams, either of them, right? Like, they played each other. Bama lost to Florida State. Georgia has, God, they just keep holding on there.
They're getting away with it, team.
But
their metrics are going up at the same time. They're getting away with it against SEC teams, so that helps.
It helps, but at the same point in time, it's just like, how many more times can you keep getting away with this? Like, at a certain point, this is going to catch up to you. Like, they should have lost to Ole Miss, but
I think the good news is, and just not to say the good news is applies if you're, how do I say this? The good news is applies to everybody but Georgia fans. I think from a fairness standpoint, the good news is they can play their way in with that Georgia Tech game should be a dispositive game in terms of whether they deserve it or not. And I think that'll probably decide it. So I think I like how this works out. What's really great about this season is with so much parity within each of the Big Four conferences and the bigger field, this is so much better than the old system where you'd really just wait for one of those elite teams to do something really dumb and improbable. Just there's so many more meaningful games just on these 5 teams right here. I've got 1, 2. Oops, let me grab my laser pointer here. I've got, where are you, darling? There you go. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've counted that. 5. Those have already counted. So we've got, and that's been counted. So we've got, no, 6. We've got, just in these 5 teams, we've got 6 like super meaningful games.
Yeah, and to your point, 2 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about none of these teams. It'd have been
everybody's just waiting for Alabama to do something dumb.
It'd be like, oh man, USC could really upset Oregon here, could throw the wrench into their playoff. That's actually we wouldn't be talking about Oregon right now. Oregon would be done.
No.
Oregon would be like, we have to hope for Michigan to beat like Ohio State for even to talk like that's. And the thing is, and this was the argument we had. So we've existed for a couple of years, and we talked about that argument in the last year of it. We're like, this is ridiculous, especially with Florida State, where they threw in, it depends on how you argue it, because they technically moved it around because they wanted to avoid a rematch. But Alabama, right? Like, they left out better teams. And the thing is, we're like, hey, you know what? Oregon should have been considered in there as well, even though, we can't even talk about them because they lost to Washington twice. So it's like, they're done. It's okay, that team made the finals. Like, we're just like, they only lost to that team twice, but all right, I guess that's the insanity of what it was before. And the fact is that we've gone from a system where before, if this was a couple years ago, we'd be like, wow, what a disappointing season for Oregon. it's over for them. Versus now we're just like, yeah, okay, they're gonna make the playoff. I can't wait to see them in the playoff. That's the difference between
Yeah.
2 years has made.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up on this. So there's 3 teams in here. You've got them in Iowa, USC, and Washington. As an Oregon fan, which one worries you the most? Which game? Not necessarily a pun, but which game? I want to be very specific there.
I'm weirdly not worried about Iowa. Maybe I should be. I'll be watching it this weekend, and maybe I'd be worried about that. I don't see it.
I'm just write that down. Robert's not worried about Iowa. Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to wear that one next week, buddy.
I think they'll be okay. Be okay. But I'm not worried about Iowa. I am far more worried about USC or Washington. Because I don't, like, Oregon, say what you will about Oregon's offense, and they have had some issues the last couple of weeks, continually against Indiana, against Wisconsin. They held Wisconsin to 7. They held Indiana to 30. No one else, with the exception of Iowa, has held Indiana less than 30 at this point. So, I think at some point Oregon will shut them down and just score a couple points and call it a day. I'd be far more worried about a team that can punch them in the face, a USC or a Washington. But Washington seems to fold completely under any good team that they play against, with the exception of Illinois for some reason. But again, I remember we were here a couple years ago with the Washington-Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game, the last Pac-12 championship game, and Oregon was a 9.5-point favorite, and we're like, that's too low, and they got crushed in that game. And they beat Washington last year, but he has Dan Lanning. Yeah, he's had issues with Washington, so. I don't know. It's Washington scares me a little bit. USC scares me. Iowa does not scare me. We'll see how it goes this week.
Wow. I think USC is the easiest win there because it's at home. USC is very one-sided, and it's a good matchup from a styles mixed fight standpoint. I think Washington's the toughest there because they're by far more balanced than Iowa, and that's an underrated place to play, like we've talked about too. That's not an easy place to play, and if Washington, that's going to be a peak turnout for that game. You're going to get the absolute toughest of the Washington venue there. So it's weird to say, but I think from a balance standpoint, and they have the receivers to just trade punches at least with Oregon. So yeah, this will be a different conversation in 1 week, since at least one team will be scratched from this, if not more. Although I don't think I don't think Purdue's knocking off Michigan. All right, your takeaway this week.
Yeah, this is one of my takeaways here. I actually have 2 this week. So we're gonna give credit where credit is due here. This is basically a guy came in here, took over a struggling program that had been mismanaged for a year. Every week, every time any sort of analysis was taken, they were down 20 to 30 points. Left for dead in early spring, and then in spring as well, they quickly had to fire their past leader, and they quickly hired a new one. And we are talking, of course, of next slide.
Oh, that's okay. Now
Mark
I get that.
Carney.
Okay.
Not that Mark Carney, the other Mark Carney. For Kent State, they won a game. They have 3 wins now. That's actually insane. If you had said to us in the beginning, by the way, Kent State is going to be 3-5, we're like, what? How is that even? Which 3 games? Again, they probably beat the FCS team, but maybe they beat UMass, and who else did they beat? Who else is on their schedule that they could have beaten? And it's okay. Bowling Green, again, we're not giving them a laurel here. Bowling Green is not particularly high on the rankings. They're probably in the decidedly bottom tier of the league, very bottom tier of the league. They're well past 100 there. But 3 wins, that's not bad. And again, this is a funny thing where
not bad. It's Kent State.
Yeah,
that's Kent State Hall of Fame material.
They are still not removed from bowl eligibility. They could theoretically make a bowl. Now, will they? Probably not. But the fact that they are still potentially bowl eligible after 8 games is something, right? And it's funny because when you set it up that way, there are actually a lot of parallels between both Mark Carneys, right? Both Mark Carneys, like Mark Carney, obviously with the Liberal Party. The Liberals were in deep trouble. Like they were down 20 to 30 points every week. They had to fire Justin Trudeau functionally. He resigned, but whatever. And yeah, they both came in early spring, and now Mark Carney has basically a functional majority government. So we're not talking the exact same things, but still though, if you adjust for expectations, 3 wins at Kent State, that's pretty good. A shout out to him. And yeah, maybe this team will be like. So it's funny because I saw a graphic saying like all the head coach openings and it's like it listed Stanford and Kent State, and neither of those are like I'm fairly like they're just gonna. Why would they just not keep Mark Carney? Like actually,
Yeah, no, I don't know. They need to make something. Who are they going to get that can do better than this? It's
yeah,
Kent State. It's a poverty program.
yeah.
What's his name at Stanford has said he doesn't want to come back. He wants to go back to shopping at Costco or whatever he was doing when they called him.
I don't believe that. I think Frank Reich will be back next year for Stanford. Because this is the other
Yes.
interesting thing too. So I want to do a quick note about this too. We are
Yes.
now getting to a point where the coaching carousel is like the snake that's like eating itself. Where
Yes.
because
Yes.
we're at a point now where some of these guys are going to mathematically have to fall to a lower school. That's the point where we're at
Yeah.
now. And it's just if you were thinking of firing your head coach, like maybe I don't even know, like Boston College. I'll just throw that out there. They had
Okay.
one good year, one okayish year last year, one bad year this year. Just don't even
Oh
try
no.
it, right? Because like
I think Auburn can't even fire their guy.
no,
30.
that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're at a point where say waiting a year will save you like 15 or 20 million dollars on a buyout, you're just gonna eat it because you're just gonna be like
Yeah.
whatever. Because like you can't even do this anymore, and it's gonna be like because all the top head coaching candidates are gonna be going to Florida, LSU, Penn State. So it's basically gonna be like if you're not in that top echelon, then it's gonna be like you can have Brian Kelly, like that's what it's gonna be. You can have James Franklin, which is a terrifying thought, but whatever.
Well,
If
I heard an idea about Franklin. I think this actually, I could see this working. And this isn't a job that's open, but assuming that NC State moves on from Doran, it seems like that would be a good spot for him. It's
Yeah.
not a lot of pressure, but you can just talent up till 9 wins, which makes you just basically a hero there, right?
Yeah. So actually, I was thinking about that as well because I was like, okay, where if I'm the AD of a program, obviously James Franklin is a good coach, not a great coach, but a good coach. At what point do I say it's worth it? And if you're NC State, heck, even if you move on from Bill Belichick and you're in North Carolina, I think you say, fine, you know what? We're in the ACC. The ACC Coastal doesn't exist anymore, so they don't have to play Clemson and Florida State every year. But let's pretend let's pretend they had to. Let's pretend that every year they had to play Florida State and Clemson, or Miami, or some combination of those two. And you could say, guess what? I'm just going to go 10-2 forever. Be like, that's great. I'll take that.
Yes.
There are some schools, and the other thing about the ACC is, hey, sometimes one or two of those are both bad. So at that point, then maybe you get to go 11-1 and make the conference championship game, right? There are once you get down from the Big Ten and obviously the SEC, there's a certain level where it's, you know what? If I'm in the Big 12, yeah, sure, whatever. Let's have James Franklin go like 10-2 every year. That's totally fine. So there's a line, but it's not the Big Ten and it's not the SEC. But there's a line where it makes sense.
No, but to that point, this is where things can, from an economic standpoint, which you and I have interesting discussions about, you could see some teams below those Power 2 conferences weirdly incented to make a move. Hey, you know what? Franklin wants to coach. If we get rid of Doran now, we can get Franklin for on the cheap before everybody else. We should actually maybe fire him. Or get a Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
Again, a Brian Kelly would be great. People don't love Brian Kelly, but they would be happy with the results.
See, I 100% agree with that. The problem is that people are idiots. And the problem is that we're saying hiring James Franklin or Brian Kelly at Florida or because actually technically that was two of the schools. But okay, hiring Franklin or Brian Kelly at Florida makes no sense. Hiring James Franklin at LSU also makes no sense. Right? We see these things and we say this is a bad idea, but the boosters could be like, James Franklin, man, if we can go 10-2 in the SEC every year, I'd take that, right? That's the problem. So the thing is, in a perfectly rational society where everybody thinks like us, yes, 100%, I'd agree with you. But I think that someone is going to make a bad decision involving James Franklin and probably Brian Kelly as well.
Wow.
And that's the thing.
Really?
I think someone's going to do something really stupid. I'm not sure who it is yet. There's a lot of options of who it could be. But I think someone is, yeah.
That's a different flavor of stupid than I'd imagined. If you're spending that much money to buy out your coach and then you're going to bring in James Franklin, you probably will not be athletic director for more than a month.
But think about no, you're right. But think about it though. It's like a bunch of minus 400s, right? Are you going to parlay this minus 400 and this minus 400 and this? That's what it is, right? It's 8 minus 400s, and all you need is 1, and then it's done.
Yeah. You know what? And if we're going with just where stupid, irrational things this, and I mentioned this earlier, and I said they can't do it, which means they might wind up here. Stupid, irrational things, and it's not even run by an athletic director. It's run by 43 different rich people who think they're all athletic director. James Franklin, you're saying there's a chance he could be Auburn's head coach next year?
Possibly. It depends.
Yes.
That one, if there was one that would do it, I think it would be Auburn. I think Florida is going to say we can't do this again, but Auburn could be like, we'll take 10-2. And that's where it's, if
you left out the part where they run out of all the other names, and they're like on candidate number 8 and 9.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of which, we got a head start on this one. The Sharpest firing range. And Robert, if there's one thing that we celebrate on this podcast, it is just the horrible graphics that AI generates here. So
yeah.
I asked AI, Gemini specifically, let's give credit where due. I said, let's put this at an archery range instead of a firing range. So do you want to describe for the people who are driving or walking their dogs or doing the dishes exactly what we're looking at here, what happened to you?
Yeah, this was a very painful procedure. So basically, before it was... So you fed it the exact image from before, right? Uh-huh. You said make it. Yeah, I figured that. So basically, it's the same image as before, except all of the gun targets have been replaced with archery ranges, except for the ones in the field. Those look like the gun targets, but it's too far away. You can't tell exactly. But the big issue is the fact that before, where I was holding a gun, I still look like I'm holding a gun, and I have earmuffs as if I'm firing a gun, but I'm firing a bow and arrow. But
just being safe.
Yeah, being safe, of course. You never know when...
This is so I don't know,
good. the
my
twing.
Gosh, I'm gonna cry.
But what happens is, instead of fixing my arms holding a gun, I've just added a third arm drawing the bow back. So there's a third arm coming out of my back behind my neck. And then I think I also have another hand, too, coming out of my first hand, holding the bow and arrow.
Subject to interpretation. It looks like either that or you have just 8 fingers now, plus your thumb.
Yeah, on the one hand. It's very confusing. Theoretically, you could potentially be reaching around me and holding, but that's crazy, so it's not that. It's very clearly just a third arm. Your dog is still here for some reason. I'm not sure why the dog...
Just,
he also likes archery.
He's untouched. He's exact same shape. Yeah, he's hardy.
Yeah, he also likes archery. So. But yeah, no, this is great. I actually love this image. This is a perfect encapsulation of what AI is, so it's great.
Okay. Let's get to your graphic, like the real graphic.
Yeah, the real graphic. So again, obviously the firing range has been updated now. Florida, Colorado State, and LSU. Neither of these teams covered the spread in their game, but Florida won, which is notable because it's the first time this season that someone who won the game was fired after the game. To be fair, that's probably like the 8th weirdest thing about the Billy Napier tenure, so that's fine. But it's notable. I don't know. Colorado State did not cover the spread, and they fired him. It was only a 14.5 point underperformance against the spread, though. So among the smallest, up next, obviously, of Florida, which was a 7.5. Brian Kelly, though, this is right up there with Penn State and Arkansas and UCLA, too. 1.5 point underdog it closed at. I thought it was like 3.5 early in the week, went down to 2.5. I guess it closed at 1.5. We're going by the ESPN closing spread here. Lost by 24. Absolute blowout there. And the difference of a 25.5 point difference from the... Actually, I guess that should be 23.5. I'll fix that. But again, it's basically, again, the same clear pattern. People, after massively underperforming the spread in the game, are very clearly getting fired. And most of them have been. The average result and average difference, as you can see on the left, I updated that. That's ticked down a little bit. So it was before, I think it was like up to 19. They were basically losing by 19 before. It's ticked down to 17. And then the average difference from the spread, I think, was like 24. It's down to 22. It's ticking down a little bit. But now we're getting to the point where it's, okay, LSU is being fired for basically, these are cumulative other things, right? Especially with Colorado State. It was like you should have been competitive against Hawaii. You lost by 12, right? For Florida, it was just like apparently the rumblings were that the booster said he's fired. That's it. The administration denied it. Again, always great when that happens. And then basically immediately after the game, he was fired. So it's some of these things where it's cumulative. It's not because of this specific game. We're trying to get into these more like you were fired because of these X thing, like these 5 things that happened last year or something like that.
Yeah, I think especially with Florida, because after they lost to South Florida, it seemed like that was it. And they were just waiting until the bye week to do it. Literally, that's kind of what everybody was thinking. To your point, they actually won the game. But I think that's tweaking the numbers a little bit. The Jay Norvell thing at Colorado State surprised me. They just leveled off, but I don't know. Can they do better? I don't know. This is what's interesting is where do they have no idea where like some of these G5 programs go? Because with a lot of jobs opening, I'm just going to throw out something just to put the fear of God into you and all the rest of Oregon Duck Nation here. I would think ordinarily a guy like Will Stein, Colorado State, might reach out to him and say, hey, we're interested. You're just one time zone over here. With all there's going to be, you've got the openings now, there's going to be secondary openings when a guy like Eric Morris maybe from North Texas gets a better job, or John Summerall. If John Summerall gets a job in the SEC, as a lot of people expect, I would not be surprised if Tulane gives a call to Will Stein, which is better than Colorado State. I use that as an example because I really wonder, I think that this is going to be a tough time for programs like a Colorado State to make a change here, unless they can somehow have and this will just be, just this scenario just makes me smile inside, unless Brian Kelly falls into the Colorado State job, which I think is just a dream, just a match made in heaven, as they say.
I don't think he's going to fall that far, but it'd be pretty funny if he did. But see, this is now, the interesting thing is that, because you were starting to get to this point now where, because normally there's churn, right? Normally there's, okay, these are the top programs, and when one of these becomes open, you look at the top coaches that are not in the top programs, and then you start from there. And right off the bat, Cignetti was like, nope, I'm staying here. He signed an extension. I think he's pretty much off the board.
Yeah.
That is functionally unprecedented. I cannot remember a time, I've been following the sport for several years, I cannot remember a time that ever happened. But the thing is, it makes complete rational sense. I don't think it's any specific, like, irrational love of his of Indiana, but it's just the fact that it's like, hey, you know what? I'm earning good money here. The department budget is massive because of partly bolstered by the basketball program. I'm literally, like, in the same time zones as most of these other schools. I don't like it. It's not like I'm in the other. It's not like I'm in the other part of the country. I'm in a very well recruited area. I have access with Indiana. You also have access to the south. It's actually closer than some of the other ones to the south. You've got the entire Midwest to yourself. If you have the financial resources to compete with Penn State, which never really happened before, because it was an extremely uneven playing field for decades. This has been an uneven playing field for decades. A program like Indiana, before you got these massive media rights deals, Indiana and some of these other programs were basically completely relegated to the basement. And that's the thing. But now Indiana, especially because of the basketball program and because of NIL, they're now able to compete with a Penn State and with an Ohio State. And that's the thing. So there's really no reason for him to leave. And I think Kenny Dillingham is a name I'm going to mention a lot, but apparently there's some rumblings that he wants to stay there too. And I think that one is going to be, I suspect he'll probably go, but I don't know. Maybe he's going to pull another Cignetti. But we're now getting to a point where the first chain of the dominoes would have been Cignetti. Cignetti would have in a normal year, Cignetti takes the Penn State job, probably, right? Then, okay, then someone goes and fills his job. But that's probably, Indiana can probably only get someone from, I don't know, the Sun Belt or something. They're not going to be able to get an SEC coach up there. So then a Sun Belt one fills up that spot, and then you're good. But now with Cignetti not moving, and maybe Kenny, like at this point, I think Kenny Dillingham is in my opinion, he's like the top ranked potential head coach, right? Like he's got to be number one. Is he number one on your board?
For Penn State, I still think Matt Rule.
That'd be a terrible decision.
He grew up there.
It's a terrible. It's okay, but anyways, so let's. Again, I'm not talking specifically
Matt Rule has two conference titles. Kenny Dillingham, much as I love him, has one so far.
That's
Matt
fair.
Rule's got into really tough to look. It's not like everybody, notwithstanding we'll talk about later, not everybody goes to Temple and wins a conference title.
That's fair.
And he went to post Bryles Baylor and won a title there when it just, people thought, what is this guy doing? This is crazy. Why is he even taking that job? So
fair. I didn't necessarily mean specifically for a Penn State job. I meant more just broadly, though. But because it's like Kenny Dillingham's got to be up there as one of the top, and then a couple
one of the
others.
Top three. Exactly. Yeah.
But now you're like he gets one of three, theoretically, a Penn State or a Florida or an LSU, and if something else comes up, we're going to talk about another potential one in a little bit here. But he's one of those, and then what do the other two do? What do the other three do? Who do they then turn to? Are they going to then say, okay, we need to... See, this is another one where maybe Florida, if Kenny Dillingham were to theoretically take Penn State, I don't think he would, but let's say he did, then does Florida then say, fine, we'll take James Franklin? This is where it gets
Ugh.
really weird. I know it's bad, but no, this is the thing. This is where you can start, because what other big names do you have?
Yeah, I think at that point you look at. Ugh. See, the thing is, there is no. What's the
Because
closest thing to Saban now? That's a different discussion, but there's no awesome assistant where you look at and say, okay, this guy's going to be another head coach. He needs to have a great job soon, like to some degree Dan Lanning was, or Kirby Smart for a while. It's like he was a DC under Saban for a decade. It's okay, this guy's going to get a really good job.
I mean,
I don't. Who's an assistant like that now? This is interesting. I
there's a
haven't even thought
couple
about
maybe,
this.
but not that many. But if you're Florida, are you really going to be content with? I think Corey Heatherman from Miami, formerly Minnesota, should be on that list, considering what he's done with that defense. Right?
Yeah.
There's a couple, but this is the thing. You maybe some.
Boy, the
maybe,
SEC's a big job up from 1 year at
yeah.
Minnesota and one at Miami. That's boy.
Maybe you poach an offensive coordinator from Indiana, like their offensive coordinator. Like this is the thing. It's like you're
Yeah.
now you're looking at, again. Say you're part of this program. You're trying to sell tickets. What's going to sell tickets? Indiana's offensive coordinator or James Franklin?
You know
Like,
where we're going to land? Just as we were thinking in July or August, Florida head coach Matt Patricia.
see, this is where it gets scary, right? This is where this starts getting really scary.
Yes, this is what caused you to grow 8 fingers on one hand.
Yeah. But see, we've got to do this episode relatively quickly because this is going to be fascinating. This is going to be an amazing, and it's like some teams are going to make a really good decision, and I know it's basically a mathematical certainty that some schools are going to make a really bad decision based on what we're seeing so far. And
it's happening.
Yeah.
Some of these things are like you laid out how much money. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but it's the bus has left the station on some of these bad decision roads.
And the thing is, because we've done I mean, I've had a really great betting year so far, but even better betting so far is stuff that I haven't cashed yet, which was the preseason stuff. And some of those, it's okay, yeah, this team needs to win 8 games or something. Okay, they're just a week or two away from that. Or this team has to lose 6 games. Okay, there's just a couple weeks. Like, so a lot of this stuff it's basically pending. It's just, okay, this is probably going to happen. This is probably going to happen. A lot of to make the playoffs or not to make the playoffs. Like, I have a Texas to not make the playoff. I actually have a couple of that. But that will not officially cash until the playoff field has been set for dumb reasons, because it has to be. But there's so many bets we made preseason that are just sitting there being like, this looks amazing right now. And it's not money I have yet, but I clearly will have it. But this is the thing. We were able to do so well in the preseason analysis that I can't wait to dive into this next season. It's going to be like, there's going to be so much value in some of these markets next year. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Speaking of preseason, just related to the whole coaches thing, I want to point out something. You remember we had the podcast about what's a good coach, and I had that graphic, and I said we were just spoiled with just crazy good coaching. With Pete Carroll's dominance, that he started to fall off right when basically Urban Meyer went absolutely nuts. And then that was right before Saban. And I said, look, we're going to have a breather and a return to sanity here. And then what's happened is, it's not just that Cignetti confirmed what he did last year, but it's that everybody else got it, and to the degree of just how crazy it is. So now I can't tell you how many times I've read the phrase in social media, get the next Cignetti. Guys, there is no next Cignetti, okay? There's somebody that's going to have his resume, and they'll be good, but when you're looking to hire the next Cignetti, you're going to make bad decisions. You're going to be really disappointed when you get a 10-2 every year. Your program, not Indiana.
Actually, you know what? We say this, and as that's happening right now, James Madison, St. Nate's former school, is just like crushing it in the Sunbelt. Yes. So just keep hiring the head coach from James Madison. They clearly know what they're doing.
I've heard Chesney. Chesney, actually, he was in New England before, so he makes sense, the JMU coach. I've heard him for Penn State. They could do a lot worse. So.
Yeah, they could.
All right, now it's time to be college football Karens, where we say who we want to talk to. Okay, first of all, congratulations to Vanderbilt with their legitimate, although a little bit marred, victory over Missouri, since Missouri lost Bo Pribula. But hey, you beat a good team nonetheless. Handing Missouri their second loss. Vanderbilt clearly is a good team. I was driving back. I was in Sedona last week, and when I was driving back, I was listening to a lot of pods, catching up, as you can see here, the Audible, College Football Inquirer, and Split Zone Duo. Every one of them talked about Vanderbilt. And Robert, not one of them talked about Jerry Kill. And I've been making this specific point, and it goes back to the broader point about these college football reporters. They tend to usually be excellent at their jobs at reporting, and absolutely horrible at analysis. Analysis meaning basically how do we basically assimilate and come up with observations on our reporting, right? Nobody mentioned the name Jerry Kill. And I want to submit, I don't want to say speculated, I've made a strong argument about who actually runs the Vanderbilt program, right? This is my first time of actually submitting evidence. I want you to look at this picture, Robert. There is one guy who has his hand on his hips. He's just kind of staring at the scoreboard, looking what's up. He's got some kind of just folded piece of paper with not much on it in his left hand. That would be this guy. His name is Clark Lee. He calls himself the head coach. We'll let him get away with that for now. I want to point out this guy right here, okay? This guy, he has a headset on. He has clearly what appears to be a play call sheet in his left hand. He is about to yell at the referee and at everybody on the field to get gathered after a little false start there. Which one of these guys, I'm just asking you your judgment, who's coaching this team?
Yeah, no, this is going to be obviously for Jerry Kill. And the thing is, there is so much, even just circumstantial evidence of this as well. Vanderbilt, nothing particularly special, but then Diego Pavia and Jerry Kill come there, and all of a sudden they have an amazing run last year where they knocked off Bama, almost knocked off Texas. Both, like, Texas obviously making the semifinal, and then this year obviously being a top 10 team and one of the best in the country. And again, we just talk about Clark Lee for some reason. And again, you're talking about future Penn State coach Clark Lee, right? This is the problem. There is going to be so much value. Whoever hires Clark Lee, I would just immediately bet against them. Like, just straight up, whatever the line is, I don't care. Immediately bet against that season total. Because, like, it's not even...
Let's see if he brings his OC and he brings his actual head coach.
That's fair, right? If Jerry Kill comes along, sure, yeah, okay, then I'm betting in the national championship. But if Jerry Kill, because here's the thing, and it's crazy, right? If I was running Florida's head coach search, I'd be like, let's hire Jerry Kill. They'd be like, you're crazy. I'm like, no, I'm not, actually. We should hire Jerry Kill. But that's the thing, right? Because, again, who would have thought, this, and we keep talking about the same point now, because everybody keeps saying find the next Signetti. The problem was Signetti wasn't, we thought he was a good coach, and we were like, hey, this is really good. Again, he still massively outperformed our even highest expectations of him.
Yeah.
Again, I thought he could be good. I thought he could get them to a bowl, possibly. Didn't think he'd get them to the playoff. Didn't think he could get them into the Big Ten championship game in year 2. I thought he'd be good. But, again, they took a massive risk on Signetti. And the thing is, doing it on a guy who was mediocre and then really good for 2 years when you got one specific quarterback and one specific offensive coordinator or offensive assistant or whatever Jerry Kill's official job title is. I'm not sure what it is. It's clearly head coach or offensive coordinator, basically. But you get him, and then there's your only data points. You can be like, see, he made the jump up. He built this program. It's like, no, it's very clearly on offense. Their defense is not that great. So this is the thing. It's honestly, like, I'd hire Jerry Kill. Like, I have a very specific list. People are going to say that list is crazy, but I'm fascinated to see where Jerry Kill goes next year. I don't think he's probably going to not be... Like, they're going to hire basically everybody from Vanderbilt's going to be shipped off somewhere else after the end of the season. But, like, I'm fascinated to see where Jerry Kill goes.
Do you want to know... Here's... If you ever see this, you... And this goes not to you, just you, Robert. This is you, everybody that's listening to my voice right now. I am asking you, I'm almost making you contractually bound. If you hear any analyst, reporter, whatever, in this college football space reference, or just ask the question, hey, what is Jerry Kill's buyout? You have to let me know. That is someone that I will say you have to listen to ahead of me. That's someone that is plugged in and gets it.
Yeah.
All right, one other I want to talk to here. Robert, Rick Neuheisel has been having a good time lately, and apparently a little too good of a time, because he actually said UCLA is going to upset number 2 Indiana. Rick Neuheisel, obviously the father of offensive coordinator Jerry Neuheisel. We'll talk about him a little more in the next episode. I didn't have to post a score here because even if you didn't see the game, you look at these numbers right here, it's pretty clear that UCLA did not beat number 2 Indiana. I don't, and this is very appropriate, I don't have kids. I've never had the desire to have kids, so I don't know what it's like to be proud of your kid as he is. I do have a very talented dog that I try to work into the podcast, he says, holding up his dog, member of the firing range crew. But man, you're on TV. You got to be better than this, Rick Neuheisel. Please?
Yeah, I mean, they were 25-point underdogs, which is only... I know that was the same... That was basic... I think actually slightly more of an underdog than they were against Penn State. But okay, again, like even if you just did basic math on that and you're like, okay, Penn State, we were this, we beat them by this, but then Indiana, like you should have, like again, it's actually funny. I did have Indiana plus 25.5. Again, that was not a bet on UCLA to win. That was a bet on, okay, maybe they could get it, we keep within 20 or something. That was basically, we actually talked about that in Island Time specifically. Indiana is going to win this game, but like 25, that's a lot of points, but they still crushed that number too, right? So it was very clear early on. No, I get it. But the thing is, there's this UCLA has now become, I think, where Colorado was a couple of years ago now, where it's just, oh man, they're just giant killers. It's okay, they just took down like the rotting husk that was Penn State, and then they beat up on a Michigan State team that is also maybe not very good, and then they got crushed by Indiana like everybody else in the Big Ten. Like I think they're at this point now they're just like an average Big Ten team. Yeah.
Very fair. All right. All right, you want to talk to... Boy, this is nothing that comes up on this podcast ever, right?
Yeah, I know. So this is amazing. So this is the AP, for people listening, this is the AP poll from the last 3 weeks, week 8, week 9, week 10. Week 8, so I should probably highlight a UCF here, but it's fine. UCF was, in week 8, UCF was 19th ranked, and Memphis was 22. Then USF. Yeah, USF. Yeah, USF was 19. Memphis was 22. Then in week 9, because Memphis lost to an unranked UAB, as tournament favorites, again, a bad loss. That's fine. Memphis was unranked, but USF stayed at 18. Then this week, after Memphis beat USF barely, now all of a sudden USF is unranked and Memphis is 25. So this is a problem for many reasons, because one, I feel like they feel they have to have a non-power 4 team in the rankings because they have to but it doesn't work that way because that's not your job. First of all, if you don't think Memphis is top 25, don't put them in the top 25. That's it. That's the committee's job. You are not the committee. You are definitely not the committee.
Yes.
It's not your
you
job.
You said the magic word there, committee. Go on.
Yes,
sorry.
That's the committee's job. Let the committee figure that out. If they want to put Memphis 25 for some BS reason, sure, power to them. That's fine. You do not have to do that, okay? That being said, though, Memphis probably should have been ranked higher anyway, so it shouldn't have probably fallen out of the top 25. This should have been a much more gradual thing. USF was a bit overvalued. This is the problem, though. This is the AP kind of doing something it doesn't need to do. Like, you don't need to put a G5 team up there just so you could say this is the team that would make the playoff if the AP. No, let it sort itself out. Let all of them sort itself out. That's the committee's job. And honestly, again, for antitrust laws, you have to have this there. Whatever, but it's a dumb system anyways. This is the thing. And we're gonna talk about this in a bit with the playoff too. It's just, if Memphis is clearly not. Are they the best G5 team?
They're in the discussion. But
they're in the discussion. They're in the discussion. But it's not, oh man, 100% they are the best. I would much rather let it all sort itself out. There's other teams that could be considered as well, right? JMU. I mean, you have Louisville 16th there. Throw JMU up there, right? This is the thing. There are far better teams. There's teams that I would rather put there rather than just throwing up Memphis just because, right? So this is the thing. This matters, right? If you don't think they should be up there, then just don't rank them there, right? You also you shouldn't have it to a point where you drop a team that much. If you think, it's also like, whatever way you think about this, it's undefensible, because then if you think that, so like in that case, what's USF rank? Because they only beat them by 3 at home, right? So what is USF 26th? You can't keep doing this. You can't just be like, okay, you have to have this as defined criteria here. You can't just be like, okay, they look bad this week, so we're going to drop them, but okay, they look good now, so we're going to keep them up, but they look bad, they lost to this bad team. You can't be like, Memphis lost to a bad team, they're bad. Now, USF lost to the bad Memphis team, so they're bad, but also Memphis beat USF, so they're good now. Like, you can't, that's not how this works. You can't do that. That's what they did, clearly, but that's not, like, my top 10 and my top 25, or in whatever, it moves a little bit, but not that much. Like, again, if, for example, right, Miami lost to Louisville. Everybody still has Miami ahead of Louisville, right? You're not just going to be like, Miami's done, like they're 25th now, right? Texas Tech lost to Arizona State. Arizona State lost. Texas Tech moved up a spot, right? This is the thing. You don't just penalize teams, right? For example, right now, we have, the AP at least, has Georgia 5th, Georgia Tech 8th. If Georgia beats Georgia Tech in the final week of the season, what is Georgia Tech 20th now? 5 beat 8. That's how that's supposed to work, right? Like, now, if they beat them by 20, sure. But if Georgia Tech, if we get an exact repeat of last year's game, where Georgia basically breaks the game, the rules of the game, to continue calling timeouts in overtime, and they
Yes.
win by a 2-point conversion, I'd raise Georgia Tech. I'd put Georgia Tech up a couple spots, theoretically, if you're doing it
Yeah.
this way. I would not drop them. But that's the AP will be like, nope, they're 20th now. That's the insanity of the AP poll.
Yeah, and I forget who Houston lost to, because they only have one loss. Do you remember? I'm gonna try to pull it up on my phone here.
Arizona?
No,
Texas Tech,
they,
Texas Tech.
They already played Texas Tech.
Yeah, they lost to Texas Tech. That's who the loss was.
Okay. So let's say they didn't play Texas Tech at all. Let's say instead, let's do this better. Let's say instead of losing to Texas Tech, they beat North Texas. Okay? Let's also say that in this week right here, that just 2 weeks ago, that in that week they lost to UAB. Houston would not be anywhere near the top 25. In that case, all credit to UAB for winning that game, but it's not quite a disqualifying win, but you're in the penalty. It's a 5-minute penalty. It's a major. It's not a minor, to use your native terminology, north of the 49th. It's not a 2-minute minor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree. I also do want to point out, Robert, just save this for later. 2 weeks ago, Texas is number 21. Now they're 20th in this poll. Just remember that for a little bit later, folks, okay?
Yeah, if you actually, when you look at it like this, like visually, there's actually so many like crazy things. Oh, like for example, Virginia was 16th in week 9, and they're 10th now after barely beating UNC. Okay,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? A lot of stuff doesn't make sense.
No. All right, victory laps. Mine, I'm going back. I'm doing a little bit of a deep cut here. So in the week 8 preview, give myself a little credit. I did point out that Wake Forest actually had crawled into the top 20 in my defensive ratings. And lo and behold, they really did a number on the SMU offense here. 246 total yards, 4.4 per pass and 1 interception, and just 2.7 yards per rush. Did not see this coming. It's not like I'm saying, hey, I called this. It was not a dual model play. It was not don't think it was just a play on my model alone. But Wake Forest defense, a lot of times you can see these little green shoots, I guess as they call them, ahead of time. That like, all right, they are showing signs that are not in the national narrative yet, and this is a good example of one of them.
Yeah, this one was an interesting one for me as well. SMU is a team I haven't been able to figure out all year.
Well, their problem was supposed to be on defense this year, too.
Yeah, it was supposed to be only allowing Wake Forest 13 points is not bad. That's not bad at all.
No.
So, it's... Now, maybe there was a bit of look ahead here with Miami next week. Maybe. But, still, though, Wake Forest is surprisingly not bad. So,
Yeah.
I'll give them some credit for that.
Yeah, Dickert, year 1. You and I like him more than most, and we underestimated him. I think it's just maybe just like the Dickert family that actually properly gauges what he can do right away.
No,
Yeah.
it's Wake Forest is actually pretty good. They're I've bet them on them a couple. My models respected them sometimes. It liked SMU over them, but my model has respected Wake Forest sometimes.
We will talk about them in Island Time. They've got an very interesting game this week. Talk about two
Okay.
teams with different trajectories. All right, your victory lap here.
Yeah, no, we're just gonna talk about Georgia Tech here very quickly because again, this is a team we really love, and we love the direction of the program here, and we have them ACC champion, and this is people are gonna look at the box score and be like, what are we looking at here? But this is like a classic game where people would just overlook it and just be like, okay, whatever, and maybe it'd get closer or not, but they covered they knew the job, they scored in every quarter, only a field goal in the first, but whatever, 17 in the second. They understood the assignment and just crushed it. Like 304 passing yards, 239 rushing yards. And they get 3 passing touchdowns, 9.8 per attempt. Again, it's just the fact that it's just we are just going to keep scoring. You can't stop us. And it's just like Georgia Tech is a really good team, and I think we're on them. And I've actually already bet them against Georgia. I can't wait for that game. That's their last remaining hard game for Georgia Tech, I believe, until the potentially ACC championship. But like Georgia Tech is like, it's so weird. No one talks about this team at all. I just want to talk about them because it's like they're just silently undefeated here. Like we talk about, oh man, Ohio State and Indiana are undefeated, and Georgia Tech is just sitting here getting. I mean, we have them ranked around the same as Georgia, but they're just like silently undefeated. It's actually crazy. It's actually crazy, like how little we talk about this team.
Yeah, it's funny. And Brent Key is a name I've seen coming up for some of these good jobs. So let me just. Could you see it happening? Brian Kelly at Georgia Tech?
Maybe. My only problem with Brett Key is the fact that he found such a. It feels like Georgia Tech is such a good fit for him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he could replicate that at a Penn State or at a. It's a small school, smaller
Oh, yeah.
budget. Now maybe it is better. Maybe he can actually just turn it around, and I don't know. I don't know. But
I
it's
Yes, but to be clear, I didn't ask you if he could succeed because somebody else on this podcast, not named me, said there's a lot of dumb people making decisions here.
that's
I could
fair.
definitely see somebody talking themselves into it.
Yeah, we're getting to a point now where like mathematically this is gonna have to happen. Like something's gonna have to give
Yeah.
somewhere. Someone's gonna have to do something like this.
If he's undefeated, it's almost it's the temptation is going to be too great, and I would imagine he doesn't have a huge buyout either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, were you on Syracuse on the under season win totals this year? I know I was pretty heavy on that.
I think
I
I
didn't like
never
their
did.
defense.
Now you got a little bit lucky with that because they lost their quarterback.
Yeah.
Because they dump truck Clemson
Oh,
and
they're
then
just
lost
trying to
their
fit in the
Yeah.
ACC.
Yeah, but no, it's yeah. I was a bit under them. I still believe in Fran Brown there. I think they will be really good next
do
year.
I.
But
Yep.
like the fact that they did what they did against Clemson. Now, okay, they lost their quarterback, which I didn't even think he was that good of a quarterback, but apparently he was the only thing keeping this team together. Apparently,
Yes.
I like give him more time, give him one more year, and yeah, I'm betting Syracuse futures next year.
Fair. Okay. Things that randomly bugged Robert. I saw this, and I'm not sure what your issue is.
So
Help me.
So this is the thing. So basically, this was from the Joel Klatt show. He talked about again. Nothing on Joel Klatt this week. He's fine. But this is basically. I'm fairly sure he used the AP poll. My only concern is that now we have this 24-team CFP bracket, and it's fine. I just think it's a bit too big. Because the thing that really annoyed me is that look at the first round here. Let's go through the second round is mostly fine. But like the big complaint last year was that every game was a blowout, basically until the semis, with only a couple of exceptions of that. But look at the first round, Tennessee versus Virginia. Okay, that's a joke. Clearly Tennessee would go through that. Miami versus Tulane. Okay, that's Miami. LSU versus Oklahoma.
Whoa, hold on.
Okay.
You're just gonna whip past Summerall against Mario in that one?
Okay, but I just think Miami's far too resourced. I don't think they could.
Yeah,
I
that
think
could be
they-
interesting for half. It would
Maybe.
be like, oh my god, he's getting his pants pulled down
Yeah.
here. But sorry to interrupt, but go
Oh,
ahead.
it's all good.
Yeah.
But okay, Oklahoma, LSU. That's I don't even know. That's just one of
An
the.
interim coach in the playoff? Is that where we're at now?
Yeah, technically, the time this was made was not an interim coach, but that's fine. But no, again, same thing. That's actually one of the other things too, is that if you do expand it out to 24 teams, this is going to severely curtail the amount of in-season firings, and just firings in general, because all of a sudden success is just gonna be like we made the playoff, so we're good now. Like at these mid schools, see, this is why you can't have this, because this is. I'll go through the bracket. I'll talk about that point. So then you've got Cincinnati, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is clearly a better team than Cincinnati. They're going to exploit that. Missouri versus USF. Okay, come on. What are we doing here?
That'd be a fun one. I'd watch
kind of
that one.
fun, but
Yeah.
Missouri before the quarterback injury. But yeah,
Yeah.
Missouri
Oh, yeah.
would have been very clearly favored in that one. Vanderbilt versus Arizona State. Okay, it could be interesting. That one, I think that's one of the only interesting ones. Louisville versus Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech should be favored in that one by a bit, but that one, there's two good ones basically. Illinois versus BYU. Okay, that I'd probably take BYU there. And then you start getting into the second round matchups. Those get a little bit more interesting. But again, why is Louisville here? Why is Virginia here? We don't need, the Big 12 is arguable, but the thing is, so just the way this is laid out is that you have 4 teams each from the Big 4, right? 4 teams from the Big 10, SEC, Big 12, and ACC. 2 G5 champions. Notre Dame technically gets the at-large, but they have the ability to get the at-large if they're ranked above a certain number. And then the rest of them, then you get another basically 5 at-larges for the remaining, basically for the Big 10 and the SEC, because you're not pulling down random Big 12 school or random ACC school. The point is that if you do this, you're unintentionally basically subsidizing the ACC and the Big 12, because these teams who have no business being in here. Again, this bracket has Oregon, yes, but it doesn't have Washington. Now, it would have had Washington after they crushed Illinois, but it doesn't have USC. It doesn't have Nebraska. Like, this is the problem. Like, Nebraska should be in a heck of a lot more before Virginia. USC should be in a hell of a lot more before Virginia. Same as Louisville. This is the thing. Heck, even the SEC ones. But this is the problem. Is that there's way more teams in the Big Ten and the SEC than there are in the ACC and the Big 12. Maybe the Big 12 is pretty big too, but like basically this is just a giant gift to those conferences, where basically mediocre coaches in those conferences get to go to the playoff every year or two, right? And
Yeah.
the thing is, you're inadvertently hurting your coaches from the bigger schools who can't go. If there's log jams in the Big Ten, which there will be, then you're hurting them. Because this only has what? How many Big Ten schools does this have? This has just what, 4? Yeah, Ohio
with
State.
Illinois, yeah, because you don't
It's
have
just
SC or Nebraska or
yeah,
Washington.
it's just 4, which is
Yeah.
crazy, right? Because
Yeah.
USC, Washington, Iowa, Nebraska should all be ahead of Virginia and Louisville. And
But you've had teams lose since already just in 1 week. You've had
yeah,
USF and Missouri and ASU. So
this list would have a lot of churn, like week to week.
yeah,
This would look really bad week to week. But again, I feel like it's at least in this, if you took it down to 3 or maybe 2 for those, and then like I think that's a lot better. But for me, this is just too big at this point. But if this is
yeah,
what it's gonna take to get the Earn It on the Field conference to agree to this, then fine. But it's still dumb. Like, they shouldn't have 4 teams, and they know they shouldn't have 4 teams either. But see, this is the thing. They weren't going to agree to actually accept something that was better for them, but more appropriate to their skill level. Like, they could have good teams, but they don't have 4 good teams, right? If you told me Texas Tech made to like the semifinal or final, I could believe it. I'd be like, yeah, sure. But that you can't just drag along 3 other teams that are probably not that good.
yeah, yeah. Yep, agree. All right. Time for awards. My Jimbo award goes to, boy, it's just the same handful of guys every week. How about that? Texas, all gas, no brakes. How quaint does that seem now? This is a beautiful graphic here from college football at CFB Home on Twitter. You've got three programs that's been a calendar year since their last SEC conference win. Arkansas, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. Mississippi State rapidly approaching 2 calendar years. The reason I bring this up is Texas just went to overtime against 2 of these 3 teams in back-to-back weeks in very different ways. One in a 16-13 rock fight at Kentucky. Now, in fairness, not that a lot of context is going to help the cause here, but at least both were on the road. Then they did have a nice comeback win in overtime against Mississippi State. They were absolutely just embarrassed in that game for long periods of time. Not surprisingly, the comeback was capped off with Arch not playing. So Sark, with his usual great job of getting meager performance, man. You follow message board geniuses on Twitter, right?
No, I probably should.
Oh my gosh, you have to follow that. Yeah, it is what you think it is, and just the Texas stuff was amazing, just amazing. And part of those tweets on message board geniuses were referencing this. I'm sure that you and I and Isaiah threw this back and forth about this reporting that from this lady actually writes for The Athletic saying, hey, my sources say that Sark has been letting NFL teams know that he's open to coaching. And this is something that you don't see all the time. I don't remember seeing this. Actually, Sark's his reps, Jimmy Sexton and this Ed guy, who I'm not familiar with, basically, they put out statements just saying this is false, blah, 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 blah. Absolutely not true. And Robert, it's just like I'm missing something here. I felt compelled to put my own statement out, rivaling the CAA one here. So this is a statement from BuckMetrics, and my statement is, am I the only one who's actually watched Texas play this season? They're not that good. Who's clamoring for this?
Yeah. I actually love this, because this is my first reaction when I saw this. I'm like, but why? They're like, oh, cause I remember some people like, oh, the Titans have a head coach opening, which they're technically the only team that's fired their NFL team that's fired their head coach. And I'm like, but why? Why would they want Steve Sarkisian? It's been like, okay, he made the CFP semifinals last year, okay. This year they've not been particularly good. What, like, there's, at this point, okay, Harbaugh went off to the Chargers. That's gone pretty well. I had a couple rough weeks there, but it's gone pretty well.
Yeah, there's, by the way, I have to say it. There's no comparison of Sark to Jim
No,
Harbaugh. Just
exactly.
no.
I'm just writing the legacy of like recent college to, but Sark is not as good as Harbaugh. Fairly sure he lost. No, he did. They never played. They never played. But again, like I think in general, I think you have to be very careful when you do college coaches to the NFL, just in general. But this one would be like extreme. Like it's like they got away with a lot of stuff last year in the SEC. Couldn't beat Georgia, right? So like they got a very down SEC year. Now that they're actually playing decent SEC teams, now they're actually in pretty rough trouble here this year. Shouldn't have 2 losses, should have 3 losses at least. Have more upcoming, right? Is this the kind of, oh, okay, I'm going to, because that's my first thought on this was like, oh, is he like saying, oh, okay, we've got Georgia and Texas A&M coming up, and I look a lot better now than when I have 4 losses. Is that what this is? Because that's what I thought.
Was he looking to get hired in a week?
Yeah, was it like, oh, okay, give me the offer now, and then I'll just kind of like tank the season. Oh, I'm taking the season so I can start. Is that? But it doesn't really matter because the season doesn't start. I'm really confused about this because it's okay. Maybe he has interest in going to the NFL, but does the NFL really have interest in him? But the problem is a lot of these guys are friends of friends and all this stuff, and they're just like, yeah, okay, he was okay. We're just gonna up him. The thing is, it's, if you had this would be crazy, right? If Texas opened up. It's because Texas is one of the top. It is 100% in terms of resourced. It's right up there with, if you have Penn State, Texas, Florida, and LSU all open up, you've now just got this massive black hole of just talent just pulling up these coaches. And it's just where do these people go? You just don't have enough big names to fill these jobs. And then that's just the first tranche, right? If you pull off a Matt Rule to Penn State, which honestly, at a certain point, this is going to start making sense. Then, and I don't love it, but it could make sense. But okay, then who's Penn State going? Like, who's Nebraska again? This is where you're going to have some crazy stuff this year. So, I think it's going to be like, honestly, I think Brian Kelly and James Franklin are probably going to end up with jobs somewhere this year. I'm fair, like, Urban Meyer is going to get looked at. Someone's going to make Urban Meyer an irresponsible offer. I know that's going to happen. Someone's going to.
Careful. When you say Urban Meyer irresponsible, we just be careful, okay?
But that's,
we've all seen the video.
Yes, but Urban Meyer's going to get a shot. People are going to knock on Nick Saban's door, too. Like, people are going to start doing some really crazy stuff here just to try to survive. And it's going to be a very weird year for this.
And actually I heard this on a pod I was listening to today, and I didn't know this. This is why I as much as I read on these pods, the reporting is good. It's the analysis that stinks. And I didn't know this, but this is file this away because these guys are convinced that Rule is one of the leading candidates for Penn State. The current Nebraska AD used to be the AD at Tulane, and at Tulane he hired one Willie Fritz. So could see that happening. And Fritz doing his magic. If
they hired Willie Fritz, is it crazy to think they could be better next year?
No, not at all.
No,
he might take a little time. I guess it would depend on who leaves with Rule, what players leave with Rule.
I gotta think Raiola doesn't, or he goes somewhere else.
I don't know if the thing is. No, I don't know. You say this about Rule until this year. Rule's teams don't beat themselves, but then Raiola does these kind of weird things too. Fritz took a year. He went to a bad situation at Houston, obviously, so he took a year there. But he had a couple. It took him a while at Tulane, so I don't know. Now it's not Tulane is resource rich. And then he didn't really take over a good spot there. That's interesting. I'd like to see him with a well-resourced program like Nebraska. Because he actually was successful in taking Georgia Southern from FCS to FBS and being pretty decent at it, too.
Yeah.
One more thing about Texas, too, is I want to do a bit of a 180 here, admittedly. I have to say that offensive line is soft. Almost to the point where I might have been a little too harsh on Arch. I still don't think Arch is anything more than an average FBS quarterback, but I can't look at that offense and just that soft offensive line and say, there's my next NFL head coach. I'm a rich guy, and I'm going to have him coach my horrible NFL team.
That's the other thing, too, right? Like, the Titans are not particularly great on offensive line either, so you're basically like, oh, like, now, it was weird, right? Because when you think back to Sark, originally when he started at Texas, they were very weak on the offensive line to the point where they lost to Kansas. A really bad Kansas team. But they got better for a couple of years, and then this year they're taking a massive step back, and that's the Texas's offensive line. That's something in my mind that I've like bookmarked, and in the offseason I want to figure out what happened there. Because I remember in our preseason metrics, their offensive line looked fine, right? It was not bad.
There's some new guys, but I've seen this specific act up close and personal about 50 miles up the road at the Coliseum. He's one of those guys, the longer a guy is in the program, they just regress. And that's been USC's brand post-Carroll. That's one thing I think that Riley's changed, not to make this a Lincoln Riley segment. But that's another reason why. It's not like he's trying to coach up 2 and 3 stars in the SEC. What would be a good breakdown is looking back at like where the offensive line recruiting rankings were compared to the rest of the SEC.
Yeah.
They have to be in the top 3. And honestly, they are not performing even at mid-level. They're way below SEC.
It's something, because we have PFF grades for that too. That's because one of the things I want to start doing is this year was crazy for me because we had a Ontario provincial election and then the federal election. So I got started late. But this year I want to get started on this relatively quickly and start nailing down these portal transfers, because you'll be able to do that relatively easy now with only one window. So I want to start nailing down these and figuring out what went wrong with some of these schools that we missed on or that looked okay and then they had bigger problems. I want to start figuring that out, and I think PFF grades and other stats might help. But that's something I've bookmarked that. I will have an answer for that in our preseason next year.
Cool. All right. For your Jimbo Award, I think we've talked about this guy a bit already, but go ahead, please.
Final one for now. But I think, as we talked, I think he's going to end up somewhere this next year. Like, he's mathematically almost going to have to end up somewhere unless he stays in the penalty box for a year. But no, I'm just going to bring this up again, right? We said from week 1, hey, offense doesn't look good. We said before the season we had some questions, but after week 1 we're like, that was not good. And even after that, we said, and remember, he in that press conference said, oh, why are you asking me about the offense? We just won the game. You want me to win 70-0 or something? Like, yes, we want you to get, and look at this right here, against Texas A&M, 2.2 yards a rush. You can't do this. You cannot do this. Because of that, you now only are averaging 5.6 a pass against Texas A&M. And there's this weird story about what happened with Brian Kelly on Sunday where basically the athletic director said fire the OC, and he's okay, I'm also going to fire the offensive line coach. And that apparently got Brian Kelly fired. I'm not particularly sure why that got Brian Kelly fired, because that doesn't seem like, unless they were like friends or something, but I don't understand why firing another person on top of the person you're already going to fire. Something's very weird about that, but I'm just going to ignore that because that seems crazy. But
not to get the political, but I think the next step he said, okay, I'm going to raise your tariffs by 10%. But
something like that, yes.
Yes.
But no, I don't. But again, the problem was the offense, and this is not a new problem. This isn't like this week was the only week they were ever bad on offense. They've been bad on offense for several weeks. They were bad on offense in week 1. They were bad on offense against Florida, only scoring 13 points against Florida, where 7 of those points were on a pick 6. You didn't score a single point in the fourth quarter. You could have really helped yourself there. The only reason you covered and possibly even won the Florida game was because of Florida's offense. How crazy is it that Florida's offense cost them the game? Like, literally cost them the game. They were offensively bad against Ole Miss, offensively bad against Vanderbilt. And again, these were known things. You could track, like, again, they have tablets on the thing where you can see plays. Don't you just look at the box score. Go on, open the ESPN app on your phone. I know you have it on your phone. Open up the ESPN app, look at the box score. You can see there's a problem there. That's all it would have taken. But he didn't accept that as a problem, and now he's gone. So, there you go.
Yeah. One other thing, shout out to my guy Hambone. He texted me 2 hours before anything broke, and he said, Kelly's fired, thank God. And I immediately searched Twitter, and I saw nothing reputable reporting this. The only thing was literally, I'll say this delicately, an account named after Nancy Pelosi's chest reported that Brian Kelly was gone. I need better reporting than that. And literally 2 hours later, it's like, yep, team meeting scheduled at 6. He's gone.
To be fair, though, and again, if you follow this podcast, as of the firing range, that would have been a fireable offense, right? 100%.
Yeah.
So I was in no way shocked. I was like, watching the Texas A&M game, as they kept piling the points, I'm like, oh, he's gone now. He's gone.
The money's just insane, and they're involving the governor. There's just weird things there as Auburn. When you're involving the governor in that kind of decision, just I don't know. They win national titles.
Yeah, what a crazy call, eh? Be like, we want to fire the head football coach and the governor instead of dealing with this is hurricane season. There's the U.S. federal government is shut down. Instead of dealing with any of those other problems, no, we need to fire the head football coach at LSU.
What? I'll be right on it. I'll be right over. Give me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Let me get this trade rep that I'm trying to deal with on the side here. I'll be over there in 5 minutes. I'll tell this guy to piss off.
Yeah.
So, okay, a couple things to talk about for future reference in the form of a question. Is Temple going to make a bowl? Temple is 5-3, only one loss in the very tough American. I don't think they've had a tough schedule. One more to get bowl eligible. It's going to be tough. I don't think it's impossible. Casey Keeler overlooked in our Coach of the Midseason Awards, but man, if he gets Temple to a bowl, they were in a bad situation last year. Do you think they make it?
I think they only got one. They only need one more win to get to a bowl. I think they're going to get there, right?
These remaining games.
It's not fun. It's hard to find one. East Carolina, I get at home is I guess your best shot. At Army is also not horrible either. If you're having to wait until Tulane and North Texas, I'd be a bit worried. But other than that, I think you're in good shape. So
here's where the bad news is the good news is that at that point there could be Summerall and Eric Morris rumors flying around all over the place that they're in competition for the Auburn job, which since opened up. We've seen like the rumors kind of be a little, not the kiss of death, but teams, once they get stung by those rumors, the coach does, it seems to affect them a little bit.
Do you think it's more on the coaching side or more on the player side where they're like, oh, our guy's gone?
Yeah, I think it's the player side where they're not focused. Yeah, I think so. The other one, gotta represent my lovely Owls here. My Owls are 5-2. A loss to Wake Forest, who just beat SMU. A 1-point loss to Wake Forest, I will add. And I am not going to penalize them at all for losing to Indiana by 56-9 because that basically makes them a mid-pack Big Ten team. I think this team's going to make... Now, I don't know. Save me from myself. Are they still winning tonight against lowly UTEP?
They are currently losing.
Are you serious?
17-16 in the third.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. We'll coach Kurt Taylor a little bit.
They're still good.
Making a bowl, right?
Yeah, they're making a bowl. Yeah, they're going to make a bowl.
They're going to, even if they lose this game, which I hope not, they're going to make the Conference USA title game, right?
Probably. This is a Conference USA game, but...
Yeah. I don't think UTEP's going to be a tiebreaker with them. I'm pretty confident about that if they lose this one.
No. There's weird tiebreakers, but I think it's pretty much them and Western Kentucky are the cream of the crop there. So.
Oh, you can't lose to UTEP, man. Okay.
It's not over yet.
All right. Robert, thank you very much. Thank you, College Football. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Stay tuned. Listen to our Week 10 preview in the next episode. So we will talk to you then.
See ya.